Yeah, man. Let's get that audio check done real quick. Sorry, I'm a little late. I kind of been preoccupied. I had a book delivered. I did have a book delivered, supposedly by eBay. I don't deal with eBay. I order all mine from Amazon and Barnes and Noble. So right before the video started, I'm a little late because eBay sent a deal saying, hey, your book has been delivered. So I go out there, nothing's been delivered. I've got no packages. Not cool. I've been waiting on this book. So I was looking on, yeah. I probably wrote that into the field because I've never trusted eBay. When eBay first started, years ago when eBay wasn't really that big of a deal, I lost stuff. Their system wasn't as good as it is today. And I probably wrote that in the field because I distrust the hell out of eBay. Ordering stuff on eBay is so hit or miss. So I just stick with Amazon. I just buy it brand new, whatever it is. But you can't buy an old book brand new. So I had to rely on eBay, and I didn't get it. They're saying the package is delivered, but they're not like Amazon. They don't actually show a picture of the package delivered, and there's no delivery. So I probably lost out on the money and the book because it was a one only copy. Such is life. Such is life. So I'm in rare form today, guys. I'm in a zone. I'm in a zone. I got me some stuff prepared on this tablet. Listen, this one is a beauty. Yeah, so I should have done this a long time ago, but this video here is gonna shock. It's gonna shock some people. Yeah, I'm just a little frustrated. I'm just a little flustered about that package. It'd be nice if they're in the neighborhood and the GPS says it was delivered, but they're just not quite to my place yet. But yeah, it's all right. I did notice on the website they got money back guarantee, so it just sucks. I don't want the money back. I want that book. We'll see. We will see. Yeah, man. I've been looking at a lot of stuff lately. Going over I've been so busy, guys. I haven't shaved. You know, it's not even everybody. All my closest confidants know. Yeah, this is like unacceptable for me. I don't grow hair on my head. I've been in rare form. I've been so busy. I've been having a blast at night, guys. In the evenings, I get all those Archaix Academy files. I organize all these things, and I just, in late at night, I'm really in my zone and I'm really enjoying myself. And I just, I'm no distractions with the outside world. I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, right before I go to bed. And so I haven't been taking care of myself. I'll splash some water on my face, brush my teeth. I'll sit there and put on some clean clothes. I even skipped a couple showers, and such is life. So I'm looking pretty haggard right now. But that's not going to affect this presentation at all. I promise you that. So I'm going to hit you with a humdinger at the end of this video. After I sum up all this material, I'm going to sum up years of research, two and a half decades of research. I'm going to sum it up. And sometimes I have to bring a friend. I got to you guys know, not everything is memorized. Not everything is just in the mind. I got to resort to notes. I got some stuff on my deal, but most of it's here. Most of it's here. Or I could say it's here. A lot of it is right here. So I'm just going to shoot straight. We're going to go through the history of the world, recorded human history, through the lens of resets. That's what we're going to do. And through these resets, we're going to see an incredible picture unfolding. And when we get to the end of the video, I'm going to ask you one single question after you've heard all this data, everything that I have presented. This one question is going to shock you awake. Many of you are already awake, but you've never processed all this information in tandem with this one question. So that's what this is about. So you'll have to forgive me this trespass. You'll have to forgive me this trespass to get these, details right. I'm going to be referring to this quite a bit. So, our story begins 7,264 years ago. We're talking about the Anno Nur calendar. It is the most ancient calendrical system in recorded history. It was a 600-year period, the Nur period. We've gone through this many times. It was later after several resets misunderstood. It was totally misunderstood because it was a day count system, and that day count system was a diurnal-based system. They counted the days. We've already been through this in Archaix presentations. 600 years is 216,000 days. This was later transposed as yugas. And then they stacked the 216,000 days plus 216,000 days to get the Kali Yuga. And then they added another 216,000 days to get the Treta Yuga, and so on and so on and so on. And then when they've stacked so many of these Nur periods of 600 years based off 360 days a year being 216,000 days for a 600-year period, once they'd stacked enough up, they called it a Maha Yuga, which was a great Yuga. And we've already been through all this. I've showed you the charts. You've already seen the math. But this is where it all started. It started in 5239 BC. It is the Nemesis Cataclysm. It is where all ancient calendars start. It is where the human experience begins. And anything before that has nothing to do with the human historical record. This is what I get into arguments about online with a lot of guys who are pushing narratives about human history going back before 5239 BC. I don't care about what you have found prior to 5239 BC, because none of it is in the written historical record. Only the written historical record is what Archaix goes by. We have fit our research within the paradigm of what has been found in date stelae, regnal lists, ancient traditional chronographical markers, everything that can be dated, the individual cuneiform, ancient chronologers, whatever has been said. And we have found that the earliest reference point in human history to any timekeeping system that was viable. And when I mean viable, you can check it with a calculator. You can look in all your reference materials that you have access to, and you can verify that, damn, that did happen 600 years later. And 600 years after that, that did happen. And 600 years after that, that did happen. A viable system it's not only quantifiable through so many different data points, creating data sets, but it's also verifiable by other people. This is what makes the Archaix chronology so profound. 5239 begins our story. Something terrible happened to our world in 5239 BC, which completely makes it acceptable that prior to 5239 BC, there was a thriving human civilization here. Or 5239 BC as the beginning of a whole new calendrical system. Remember, what have I shown you? What have I shown you in so many presentations? Calendars are always post-reset impositions, just like all history was written ex post facto. So, what we have here is a failure to communicate. People think that in Archaix, I advocate that the world is 6,000 years old. It's stupid. I've never said that. But is there a 6,000-year cycle? Oh, yeah, we can show that one. Are there epicycles that support that thesis? Absolutely. They're called Anuna Nurs. They are 600-year periods. Happens to be 10 of those periods to make a 6,000-year period. So, yeah, of course it is. Absolutely. So, a 600-year period is a very long period of time. I'm going to give you an illustration. So, what is 2026? Yeah, It's 2026. What we're looking at here? 2026. What would be 1424? 2026, 600 years ago, 1426. Yeah. So 1426. Can you recall from your own historical studies what happened in the world in 1426? I don't have any books in the Archaix library that old. I don't. I have no books from the 1400s, but I have hundreds of PDFs of copies of books that were written in Old English and in French and in Latin in the 1400s. I don't have any books, though. I don't own any books from the 1500s, not a single copy. But I have quite a few books from the 1600s right up here on the shelf. And I have a lot more from the 1700s. That's why I tell people all the time, look, man, if you're looking for resets, you're not going to find any in the 1800s. You're going to hear about them on YouTube. You're going to a bunch of these know-it-alls, man, that want to use photographs as evidence, but not go into the actual records and the building records and the municipal records of how they built buildings and cities and naval fleets in the 1800s. I'm not going to show you all that. They're going to invent mysteries where they do not exist. We have annual registers. I have them back here. I've showed you every single year from 1701, 1702, 1703, 1704, 1705, going all the way up through the Napoleonic Wars, 1797, 1798, 1799. I have many of them, 1801, 1802, 1803, 1804, 1805, annual registers that basically tell you what's going on around the world every single year. And they were published at the end of the years that they depict. Can't make that stuff up. There's no reset in this period of time. It's further back. It's further back. It's not in the 1800s. It probably wasn't in the 1700s either, but the 1600s is where we have some real anomalies. Still, we're talking about 600 years from today was 1426. But this is an ancient calendar that they used. It is recorded in Sumerian cuneiform. We have seen this. I've showed it all to you in charts. The 600-year period was a period of time that they come to rely on. In fact, reliance on the 600-year period is why in 1687 BC, when the Ogygian deluge occurred, because of the Phoenix, which was unexpected, they were waiting for a 600-year period. They thought they had 48 more years, and they didn't, because a new cycle had begun. The pre-flood cycle that lasted 3,000 years was 5 of these cycles, and each one of them was 600 years. In 2239 BC, that cycle ended with the Great Flood. And then a new cycle took over the human historical experience. It was 552 years. It became known as the Phoenix cycle. But it wasn't discovered until the world was absolutely, totally destroyed. Absolute 100% complete systemic reset. The Ogygian deluge, 1687 BC, in the month of May. We have 5 videos. It's a 5-video series. I've talked about the Ogygian deluge and shown you evidence about it in probably 30 or 40 videos out of 1,200 videos I have on YouTube. But I actually have a 5-part series called the Ogygian deluge. That's how much historical data that we have about this one date in the month of May, 1687 BC. What happened all around the world? We have that much data for 5 videos and several chapters in my books. But you've got guys pushing Younger Dryas, a rock from space, 12,000 years ago is all they want to talk about, but they skip everything I'm telling you about in this video. The Nemesis cataclysm, which scientists have been talking about. They've been talking about the dark star and how it caused all kinds of anomalous, unusual things in our solar system. So, let me check my chat. 600-year period is a very long period of time. Let's see. My chat's going strong. Going strong. I see we've only got 871 people in the chat. There's going to be a lot of people wishing they saw this video. All right. So I'll give you an example. 600 years was a long period of time, guys. In fact, less than 1% of the entire world's population was literate 600 years ago. Process that. We're all literate now. We get on social media and scar each other up like it's nobody's business. We're all literate now. But can you imagine a world where only 1 out of every 99 people knew how to read and write, and only about 10% of them knew how to do it really good? Imagine that. Only 1 out of every 200 people knew how to read and write exceptionally well. Everybody else, 98.5% of humanity, ignorant. They know the legends, they know the traditions, they know the folklores, they know the oral histories. They do not know how to read, they do not know how to write. When they go to mass, when they go to church, they have to accept in faith everything that they hear because they can verify nothing. It was 183 years. 600 years ago was 180, 183 years before the Pilgrims even landed at Plymouth Rock, if that story's even true. And the English colonies of North America were founded 352 years before the Declaration of Independence was even signed. 600 years is a very long period of time. I tell you guys all the time, it only takes us 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider. So a 600-year period is not only long enough for a civilization to become advanced, but it's also long enough for them to be reset, and that for the survivors to actually begin reviving civilization, all within a 600-year period. A civilization can go from primitive to advanced, reset, knock back down to like new Neolithic, and then become advanced again, all within a 600-year period, and still have some time left. 600 years ago was still 441 years before the Civil War ended in 1865. Yeah, man, 600 years is a long time. 600 years ago was like 479 years before Orville and Wilbur Wright flew for the first time at Kitty Hawk. The first example of manned flight outside of the history of the Zeppelins. Yeah, we're talking about aircraft. That back then they called them aerocraft. So yeah, we're still talking about 539 years before the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. That was 600 years ago. That's how long 600 years is. 600 years ago was 567 or something like years before, 539 years before the assassination of President Kennedy. 567 years before the invention of the internet. Oh my God, man, 600 years ago was a long time. When I say the invention of the internet, I'm talking about 1990. I'm not talking about the militarized version of the ARPANET from where the internet came from. I'm talking about when they commercialized it and made it available to the public. So 600 years is a very long time. 5239 BC, the Nemesis Cataclysm started everything. Phoenix was catapulted. Nemesis X was catapulted. The Dark Satellite was catapulted. Luna was catapulted. Every one of them. Tiamat explodes, whatever Tiamat is. The Greeks called a planet. The Greeks called one of the thrones Electra. It had exploded. And there is a theory in astronomical, traditions that the asteroid belt is a destroyed throne. And the asteroid belt is, according to the Tychus-Bode law, exactly where a planet would be if the planetary scales are correct. If the distance from Mercury is true from the surface of the sun, then Venus is exactly where it's supposed to be. And Mars is exactly where it's supposed to be. And the asteroid belt would have been a planet as well. And which makes Jupiter exactly where it's supposed to be in the mathematical distribution of the planets from the surface of the sun. Saturn is exactly where it's supposed to be, but we have a problem because the two huge ones, Uranus and Neptune, further out, switch places. During the year, they switch places, or during their years, they switch places. Sometimes one's closer than the other. So this is it's just very unusual. It's just so unusual that a 600-year period would have been forgotten unless something detrimental would have happened. Well, I got squirrels. I can hear those squirrels. Every morning I get peanuts and squirrel mix and bird mix and all that. I get 2 handfuls, and I go to either side of the building, and I throw them up. And I have a wraparound. I got a outdoor kitchen that has a ceiling that wraps around the trees and gives the trees room to sway. So I got squirrels all in these trees. They come down, they feed, make a lot of noise. You guys can't hear it with my speaker. You know what? My microphone's kind of far away from me. Hold on. You guys probably can't hear it. I can. So who all got in this chat? Before we really kick off this, Adam Cook, Nancy Neal, thank you guys for joining me. Shellcracker, Brad Long. The moderators are deep today. Otto Chenault, Clay's Pigeon. Allie Wilkin, always here. It's getting late where you are, Allie. It's super late where you are. Yeah, man. Pamela Swan, always there. Nancy Neal, Mr. C, Otto Chenault, Aaron 1080. Thank you guys, man. These are diehard moderators, guys. Archaix veterans. Been around. Nanny Boo Boo. Lacey. I think that's about all of them. Mr. C, Nelson Perez, Pamela Swan. I see y'all at the bottom. Yeah, man. I do appreciate what you guys do. Absolutely. So, we're going to move from 5239 BC because I need to paint for you a picture that in 5239 BC, something terrible happened to our world. Oceans slipped their basins. We had all kinds of volcanic resurfacing. It was terrible. We do not have a clue what this world was like prior to 5239 BC because the entire world has been completely resurfaced. Remember, I said this, and pay attention to what happens later. So, this is the origin of many ancient calendrical systems. 5239 BC is before the capture flood. It's before the moon even appeared in the sky. The pre-Selenites traditions are very real. Manuel Velikovsky talks about them a lot too. Pre-Selenites means people that were here before the moon was in the sky. And there are traditions about these. So while 600 years is a long time, this is the original Anuna system that began in 5239 BC. The next total systemic reset that our world suffered was in 4309 BC. And it is the first appearance in any records of the Phoenix. 4309 BC was the 930th year after 5239 BC. Do you have any idea how this world could have been urbanized, technologically advanced, hyper advanced, computers, AI systems, all that in that 930-year period? You know what? Real quick, let me get my phone out wherever my phone is. I have no idea what I did with my phone. All right, well, it's one of those days. You guys can do it. Matter of fact, a whole bunch of y'all listen, y'all can do it. 5239 BC. Oh no, wait a minute, 930 years. I already know. So 5239 BC, 930 years to 4309 BC, the first appearance of the Phoenix. And in the oldest records, if you go through Chronicon and you look up 4309 BC, you're going to find some crazy stuff. Like in the Gnostic Trimorphic Protenoi, you'll find out that the Phoenix is the world destroyer. And it has a special mission that'll last to the last days. In the Enum Elish text, the Cataclysm has blood raining all over the world. We know the Phoenix brings red rain, red muds, red carbonaceous material falls from the sky. It resurfaces the world and blankets the world in layers of red earth. This is what the Phoenix does. So the Phoenix destroys. The very first appearance of Phoenix in the historical record, it is destroying a 930-year 5,000-year-old civilization. The Babylonians knew this. When the Jews were in Babylon in the 5th century BC, copying their records and going through all this, they mistook what they saw as descriptors and they turned them into pronouns. So when they saw Adamu, which is a descriptor for mankind, they created a pronoun, Adam. So, and they saw that the Adamu were buried alive in red earth. This is what they read in the Babylonian cuneiform. So when the Jews in Babylon were reading all this, to them it said, oh, Adam was the first of mankind. He was made out of red earth. That's not what the texts were saying. The texts were saying that the first race, which the later Arabians called the jinn, so the very first race were buried alive in red earth. This is the phoenix. The phoenix always brings red dust, red rain, red mud, red earth, red sand falling from the sky. Turns the sun red and darkens it, turns the moon red. You guys know, man. You guys have been listening to me for a long time. You already know what the phoenix does. So the phoenix was what it rained cinnamon in ancient times. This is another, it's an Arabian legend of the phoenix. It rains cinnamon. What is cinnamon? It tastes like sand. Unless you put sugar with cinnamon, cinnamon tastes like dirt. So, and it's red. So anyway, in 4309 BC, we have the phoenix appearing for the very first time. And it begins a 138-year periodicity, which is broken into bigger cycles of cursed earth periods of 414 years, and even bigger cycles called phoenix cycles of 552 years. And we'll get to that in a minute. But the Jews in Babylon turned Adamu, mankind, into Adam, a pronoun, and they mistook how the Adamu died. They were smothered. They were buried alive in a phoenix cataclysm. And the phoenix appeared in the sky like a turning blade. And they had put that in the Garden of Eden story about the blade that turned away mankind from going back to paradise. Yeah, well, the blade was the phoenix. It was the phoenix weapon. And mankind couldn't go back to paradise anyway because it had been buried. It had been completely buried in earth. This is your Huyuk sites. This is your Tepi sites. It's not Ice Age dating. It's not 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th millennium BC like all the younger Dryas proponents, are always telling you about. I've told you from the beginning that all those Huyuk and Tepi sites do not date that old. They are 5th millennium BC. 4th millennium BC, and they weren't deliberately buried, which is the dumbest. There's so many of these sites. No civilization has the manpower to go in there and deliberately bury and cram all this dirt, red dirt. That's what all of fucking Turkey is. A whole bunch of red earth. Go in there and just pack all this stuff. No, it was cataclysm, and there's new research coming out now from the artwork, from the stuff on the seals and seal impressions, little tiny pictographic writing. More and more evidence about Göbekli Tepe and other Tepe sites are coming out, showing that a massive cataclysm occurred. Also showing that they're not as old as they've been claiming. They've trapped themselves in a box. And that box is part of the reason is because they followed that BS from Kathleen Kenyon on that pre-pottery, that stupid pre-pottery Neolithic dating, which doesn't mean anything. It only has meaning for whatever site they claim is pre-pottery Neolithic. And the only reason they even attribute this meaning is if they don't find pottery at a site. Oh, that's pre-pottery Neolithic. Therefore, we're going to date it this. It is so arbitrary. It is so dumb. But this is what they do. These sites were buried in a day. In a day. People ran for their lives. This fallout was falling from the sky. And and then it was followed by a flood, and all those places were perfectly buried and never disturbed in thousands and thousands of years of human history until they were found. So we have 4309 BC is when the Adamu were wiped out. It's a race of humans. They weren't made out of red earth. Red earth wiped them out. So this is how Genesis was composed. It was all misunderstanding. They were turning descriptors into pronouns. Now, this is what the Jews did when they wrote these texts based off the older Babylonian counterparts. I have videos where I describe every element of the Genesis chapters 1 through 5, and I show you where these names come from, the cities, what's being described here. So the Phoenix appears and ends, and it's the 930th year. This is why in the book of Genesis, the Jews claim that Adam died in the 930th year. This is why in the book of Jasher, it literally says that in the year 930 from Eden, the sun darkened and Adam, the first created, died. They mixed two completely different scenarios that were copied from Babylonian texts. One of them is that red earth, Adam, red earth had wiped out a civilization, and that civilization was wiped out in its 930th year. The people of that civilization were just mankind. And the word in Semitic Babylonian for mankind is Adamu. So they created a pronoun and said Adam in Genesis died at 930 years old. But the sun darkening episode is in the Hattaroth, and it's in the book of Jasher, where it says, in the year 930, Adam died and the sun darkened. Phoenix darkens the sun, but that happened in 4309 BC when the Adamu were wiped out. So putting all these things together, we have a better understanding of how the Jews created the book of Genesis. But again, I'm only giving you this as an illustration because 4309 BC is now the second time the surface of the world has been buried in composite material fallout from the sky. And we have documented over and over and over and over these red rains, red dust, red mud that falls from the sky with sometimes gravel, sometimes rock, and these Phoenix events have happened many, many times since 4309 BC. But this is the second. This is the second world-destroying event. Here's two, back to back. Don't need a rock from space during the Younger Dryas. In the historical record, we already have 5239 BC Nemesis Cataclysm, 4309 BC, the first appearance of the Phoenix. And it came undetected because it's on the Nemesis plane. It's not on Sol's ecliptic. We never saw it coming. Nemesis is far below our system, which means it comes from the deep, the abyss. So I told you guys, this is going to get beautiful. I'm telling you. It's all. We're going to go deep. We're going to go deep. This is just the beginning. So 4309 BC, the first appearance of the Phoenix is amazing because the squirrels are tearing up my stuff. They don't have peanuts in their feeder. I can't get up right now. They don't have peanuts in their feeder. Anytime the squirrels come through the traps and come into my kitchen, it's because there's no, they know where I keep the peanuts and they're brave. They don't give a damn. If I don't feed them, they'll come in here and take it. They just come in here, go straight to the bags. And so y'all can't hear them. I can. Squirrels ain't scared of me no more. 930 years is a very interesting number. The 4309 BC first appearance of the Phoenix is absolutely fixed in the historical record. You can't change it. You can't manipulate it because that starts 138 years all the way to 2040. Can't change it. But it's amazing. You can't change the 5239 BC date because I show it's an entirely different data set. It's based off 600-year periods, and it has its own source materials, totally independent of the Phoenix. So why is it so interesting that a full data set of 600-year periods, easily verifiable as I've shown, is totally independent of another data set of 138-year periods, and that the inception dates for both of these are 930 years apart? Why is it so interesting? Because 930 years is exactly 792 years plus 138 years, and you can't make that shit up. There's no way to manipulate this data. My Archaix veterans know both of those numbers and what they're attached to. 792 years is a third data set on it is the periodicity of the Nemesis X object. It's like the Phoenix, but it's very different. And 138 is the Phoenix number. Every 138 years, it appears in our sky in 4 orders of magnitude. Now, yeah, this is going to get deep, guys. Super deep. Glad we got 1,100 people in the chat. Glad we got 1,100. My chat's, I've lost you guys. You guys are way down here now. I can't even keep up with the chat. Man, oh man, oh man. Okay. So, yeah, I'm starting to feel this. I got to get this shit off my face today. Yeah. This ain't new to me. Okay, so this is just the beginning, guys. This is just beginning. That's 2 times the world has been reset. That's 2 times civilizations have been wiped out. That's 2 times humanity had to start over, completely start over. And they didn't have much time because 270 years is still a very long period of time. I tell you guys a lot. It only takes 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider. So in 270 years, it can be done. It can be done. A civilization can develop technology. It can be done. It can especially be done if there's any residuum of engineering and technology still left post-reset. If there's anything left behind, like the Antikythera computer, like if they would have found things like the Antikythera computer, which is a differential geared mechanism that was found in a shipwreck from 21 centuries ago off the coast of Crete, and it was discovered in 1900 by sponge divers. In 1901, somebody realized it was an archaeological relic of great value, but they didn't know what it was, so they set it aside. And it wasn't studied until 1902. And in 1902, it was made public that it was some type of computer. And in 1902, they knew what a computer was because in 1890, the very first computer was actually made, and it was for the U.S. Census Bureau. It was called the tabulator. But still, like a punch card type computer. 270 years is a very long time. So 270 years after the Phoenix cataclysm that darkened the sun, according to if you go to Chronicon, you will see the historical material that we have recorded for that period, what the scientists say about that period. It is the exact window of a mini ice age. It's the exact window when the world was freezing cold for a short period of time in its long history. It was 270 years, and the same 270 years is remembered in the traditional mythology. It's even remembered in the Jewish records. They even named the 270 years. Every bit of this is in Chronicon. But 270 years, they probably couldn't have developed too much because they were surviving cold conditions. The 270 years, though, ended abruptly in another disaster because during this 270 years, Earth had no moon. In fact, Earth hadn't had a moon since 5239 BC. Earth was just Earth. It had a starry sky, and it had a faraway giant luminary, which we know as Sol. But in 4039 BC, not 4309, but 4039, which is 270 years later, we have what Immanuel Velikovsky and Hans Bellamy have documented based off the research of Hans Horbiger. I can't pronounce the Austrian engineer's name. But we have the capture flood. It's called the capture flood because in the days of the pre-Selenites, the pre-lunar peoples, the moon appeared in the sky. And when the moon appeared in the sky, the legends tell us that the surface of the moon fractured like glass and fell to our world. And it is believed that the moon was a planet and that it was a glaciosphere that fractured off. It flash froze when it got too close to our world because we are 4 times larger than the moon. Earth is. This is in the astronomical model that's been given to us. So when the glaciosphere fractured off like glass, it all rained on Earth as glaciers, icebergs, ice, giant boulders of hail. A bunch of it came down as moisture, cold water, and it added a tremendous amount of water to our world that our world didn't formerly possess. It had seas, but it didn't have these huge oceans yet. All this brine and all that came from the moon. So this is the capture flood, and it was recent. This isn't something that happened 10,000 years ago. It's not a tertiary age event. It's not a Jurassic event. This is in the human historical traditional record. It's recent, the capture flood. So the capture flood, the moon appears, and this is when things get interesting, because prior to this point, we have no evidence of anybody even knowing about a moon. But suddenly the moon becomes the most prominent thing in the sky. Prior to this, all dolmens, all cromlechs, all megalithic arrangements were all based off heliacal risings of certain bright stars. All astronomies and all calendars were stellar based. It was all about the turnings of the bears, how the bears ran around the dragon. It's the circumpolar stars. But after this event, now the moon became something people began paying attention to, and lunar calendars soon developed afterward. This is 4039 BC. This is all in Chronicon. This is all in the Archaix research. This is just an overview. 4039 BC is 270 years after the first appearance of the Phoenix and wiping out the race of Adamu, which the Jews called Adam. After a 930-year civilization, call it a golden age, whatever, it doesn't matter. So there's a period after the moon appears of 144 years where we have almost nothing, as if humanity is at its base level, animalistic, living Neolithic hand-to-mouth hunter-gatherers, and it lasts for about 144 years. Humans may have developed into tribal societies, Gobekli Tepe, Huyuk, cattle Huyuk type societies, Jericho, stuff like that. But there's nothing really major about. There's nothing of significance for the period, other than the fact that since 4309 BC, people started burying each other in red ochre. After 4309 BC, the Phoenix event, now it seems all the burials of the Neolithic peoples, they were fascinated with burying the dead in red ochre. They would paint them in red ochre. I believe this is connected to the Phoenix phenomenon itself, but that's neither here nor there. This 144-year period ended with another absolutely, completely world-destroying event. These events are happening so fast, mankind has no chance to get technologically advanced. 144 years isn't enough time at all. So 3895 BC becomes year one of the pre-flood world. You're familiar with that date. 3895 BC is the Adam and Eve reset. It's the actual Genesis year one of the 1,656 years of the pre-flood period to the flood in 2239 BC. 3895 BC, I've shown you in the chronotexture of the Great Pyramid. 3895 BC is year one to many different ancient chronographers, and even modern ones like Dr. Stephen Jones, who wrote The Secrets of Time. Year one is 3895 BC. 3895 BC becomes year one for many different systems that I have shown, especially in my Exodus videos, where I show you the dating of the Exodus, because it's connected to the flood. It's connected to also to 3895 BC. So this 3895 BC total systemic reset, we know from the research published in many videos I've done on YouTube, scholarship that have examined the book of Genesis, and geologists and scientists that have examined the evidence for the period of around 4000 to 3900 BC. It is a complete redistribution of continents and oceans. Oceans slip their basins. The stellosphere completely changes. The skies change. There's a complete world destroying pole shift in 3895 BC. And many different researchers that I have shown their material on Archaix have this conclusion that at this period, man, the world was just totally destroyed. And that the story of Adam and Eve, like Con Thomas, the CIA document, even says the story of Adam and Eve isn't what you think. It is about a devastating pole shift that destroyed the ancient world. Now, Con Thomas kind of fell for that Younger Dryas BS and put it back at 12,000 BC, which has a lot of people have fallen for that BS. They don't want to debate it, but they fell for it. So, yeah, Con Thomas and many others show that the Adam and Eve story is a reset story. It involves pole shift. And the reason Adam and Eve are viewed as naked is not because of their innocence. It's because of a total infrastructure collapse. They had no clothes. They had no way to make clothes. This is how they were seen. Remember, Adam is an oversimplification. It is a descriptor turned into a pronoun. Adam was just descriptive of the mankind was naked. It's like Genesis starts off with an episode of Naked and Afraid. It's Adam and Eve, starring Adam and Eve, starring the Adamu and Kava, males and females. We have a special episode, Genesis chapter 1, right here. We have Naked and Afraid, and it's after a pole shift. And the pole shift was so devastating that the few survivors believed that it was a new heavens and a new earth. Because it was a pole shift. In a pole shift, you got a new heavens. The stars are not in the places you're familiar with. And you got a new earth because oceans have slipped their bases, subsidence and upheaval. Whole continents sink. They're flooded in with waters. Mountain ranges change. Some mountains go down. Others come up. Tiwanaku thrust in one night. Tiwanaku was thrust 12,000 feet in the air. How do we know? Ancient fossilized coastlines. You don't put wharfs in keys 12,000 feet altitude in South America. No, you put them at sea level. That's why all those keys are up. That's why all those keys were built. That's why all those docking systems were built. That's why all those moorings are at 12,000 feet deal, because that 12,000 feet is the altitude that you find Tiwanaku and Lake Titicaca and Pumapunka and the pyramid Acarpana. It's all right there at 12,000 feet, but it wasn't built there. It wasn't built there at all. In one single day, not the Himalayas, but the Andes were thrust up into the air. That's why Machu Picchu. That's why Cuzco. That's why all these amazing pre-Incan, whatever they are, Aymaran, these ancient megalithic structures are so high in the air. They weren't built there. Upheaval. Just like we have all the stories of the vanishing islands that went down in different cataclysms. So with 4309 BC, 270 years later, during a mini ice age, we have 4039 BC, where all of a sudden the moon appears in the sky. But when it appears in the sky, it literally bombards us with glaciers that are fractured off of its surface. So they rain on Earth and add to our world's water supply. 144 years later, we have the Adam and Eve reset, which literally begins the Genesis narrative of 1,656 years to another reset, the Great Flood. But there is another destruction, very little known outside the Archaix material, outside specialist material, the historical and traditional record, because 456 years after the Adam and Eve reset, and we know Adam and Eve weren't the first people, they're just metaphors for males and females. We know there were survivors of that reset, of that pole shift. How do we know? Because Cain killed Abel, and the story literally illustrates to us that Cain was worried. Man, banishment was almost as bad as death, because as soon as I go out into the world and they realize I'm alone, they're going to kill me. So God put a mark on Cain, so that when men saw Cain, they would know he was protected by the Most High God, even though he was banished from his own clan. What does that mean? It means the story of Cain and Abel, while it may not be true, it is conveying something of value, that there were survivors, and they weren't from the same families, they weren't from the same clans, they were out there to be feared. Hell yeah. Cain had a real fear, because after a reset, if you're banished, you just may be for dinner in another clan. It's called Long Pig. You guys know what I'm talking about. Yeah. Humans have been eating each other for a long time. A long time. So, 456 years. 456 years is a long time. Way longer than necessary for people to get their shit together, to come together. And, you know, it's more than twice 200 years, the requisite. It's more than twice that. So we're talking about a long period of time before another disaster reset the human race. This disaster was in 3439 BC, and according to our records, 1/3 of the entire world's population died. This is when the Anuna under Enki appeared in the historical record as related in the Sumerian and Babylonian cuneiform. This is when Oannes of the Babylonian mythology entered the historical record. This is when the Phoenician god Vulcan entered, civilization bringer, entered the pre-flood history 12 centuries before the flood. This is when, in the book of Genesis, Enoch appears for the very first time. Do you understand what I'm saying? In Sumerian, we have, before the flood, Enki appearing with the Anuna, 432,000 shars before the flood. That's 12 centuries. 432,000 is 216,000 plus 216,000 days. That's 600 years plus 600 years to the flood. It's the Anunnaki Ner system. So, what we have is Enki in the Sumerian tradition, dated to the exact same time, 3439 BC, as Jared, the father of Enoch, and Enoch appear in the Genesis narrative. Very compelling. Enoch and Enki appearing at the exact same time. Civilization builders. Now, Vulcan, civilization builder, appears at the same time in the Phoenician records. Oannes, 1,200 years before the flood, he appears. He's Babylonian civilization bringer. They're not the only ones. Also, Fuhi, civilization bringer, mapped out the entire world, sent his sons all over the world to map out the world in longitude and latitude before the flood. Ancient Chinese tradition. He is the first of the Dragon Kings. Who are the Dragon Kings? Before the flood, they're the same as the 7 kings of the Anunnaki who ruled the Sumerian Pentapolis. In the Chinese version, they ruled for 646 years. In the Sumerian version, they ruled for 241,200 shars. So you can forgive academia for not understanding they're the same people, because academia sees that on the Sumerian prism called the King List at the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, it literally says, and the 7 kings ruled the 5 cities of Sumer, the Pentapolis, a total of 241,200 shars, and then the great flood swept across the earth. That's what the prism says. And academia just hasn't put it together that 241,200 is actually 670 years. That's how long a shar is. It is a turning of the stars. A shar is a day, not a year. A shar is a turning of the stars. You know the song. You know the song. Billy Carson knows that song real well. I guarantee you when he listens to my channel, he sings along with that song. So 241,200 shars is 670 years. You just simply divide it by 360. It was Berosus of Babylon who effed it all up and said it was 3,600. No, he added a 0. It's just 360. The degrees of a perfect circle. So 241,000 divided by 241,200 divided by 360 is perfectly 670 years. What does the prophet Nostradamus say? Many will die before the phoenix dies. Until 670 years, his dwelling shall endure. Where is his dwelling? The sky. What happens during the apocalypse in the future and the tribulation? The sky falls. His dwelling falls. What happened at the great flood of Noah? The Typhon flood. What was the signature characteristic of the Typhon flood? As I've told you guys many times, it was the day the sky fell. It wasn't just rain. The entire vapor canopy drained out and the sun was born. This is why the ancient sun calendars began after 2239 BC. This is why the ancient Sumerian pantheon, which already had 12 gods, had to add another one named Utu Shamash, the sun god. How can you have a Sumerian pre-flood history that doesn't recognize a solar deity until the canopy came down? If you think the Sumerians are the only ones, you haven't studied Native American traditions. If you think the Native American Indians and the Sumerians were the only ones, you don't know shit about ancient Egypt, because the Egyptians tell you too. They had the Ennead. They had the Ogdoad. They had pantheons already set up in the pre-flood period of time, which they didn't call it the Egyptians didn't call it the pre-flood period. The Egyptologists, man, they're real. They try to separate Egypt from the rest of the world. All these cataclysmic systemic resets are washed away in Egyptian history as intermediate periods, but it's the same periods the rest of the world died. They just call them intermediate period number 1, intermediate period number 2, intermediate period number 3. It's so dumb. But if you look at it on a chronology, it all matches perfectly with the Phoenix phenomenon dates. So what we have with Egypt is that we have a long pantheon of gods, but the sun didn't mean shit to the Egyptians until Horus was born, the new solar hero. But Horus was only born after Osiris was killed by Typhon. What? What did you say? You guys know what Typhon is. Typhon is the fiend, Phoenix. So, and Phoenix is what destroyed the vapor canopy in 2239 BC, as we have shown with a overwhelming multiplicity of data points. I need to move on, or this video is going to be too long. So it's 400 from the Adam and Eve reset, the CIA document of Con Thomas, which talks about Adam and Eve being actually a story of a reset, and they were naked because they were totally collapsed infrastructure, and it was a new heavens and a new earth because of the pole shift. And the few survivors, the human race grew back in 456 years, and then all of a sudden they got hit with another whammy in 3439 BC, which introduces the mythologies and chronological systems of the Phoenicians in their Vulcan traditions, which introduces the Sumerian Enki traditions, which introduces the Genesis and rabbinical Enoch traditions, the Watchers and the Giants and all that, and it introduces the Oannes traditions of Babylon. It's all the same event, different cultures calling the same people by different titles. But the chronology is always the same, because when the Babylonians and the Phoenicians swear to you that it was 1,200 years from the appearance of the civilization bringer after the world had been destroyed, and that he arrived on fleets of ships, and that him and his men needed supplies, and that they traded knowledge for the daughters of men. Yeah, these were fleets of survivors from somewhere else who were all males. I think they had one female with them, a medical doctor or something, and she went down in history as Inanna, Ninhursag. But these males, they needed their own civilization in North America had been totally eradicated, buried, totally resurfaced, which is why I've shown in Archaix many times all these archaeological artifacts of human provenance are 600 to thousands of feet deep, found in well borings, found in caves all over North America. Nothing in the world has ever been found as deep as what has been found consistently in North America. North America has the deepest human artifacts in the world. So we'll get to that. Lose my train of thought. All right. 456 years is how much time they had. So we don't know what kind of civilization. We don't know how many Göbekli Tepe sites. We don't know how many Catalhuyuk sites. Remember, you cannot base history. History is a very big place, and you cannot base the all on the parts. You can't. Even the director of archaeology for Göbekli Tepe, I messaged him on X, and I asked him if he wanted to come on my channel and set the record straight with all the disinformation that Jimmy Corsetti is. But you know what? A lot of these professionals, they don't take me seriously either. It doesn't hurt my feelings. It doesn't hurt my feelings at all, because I don't take uniformitarians serious. But still, he even made a comment though on X, and it's ridiculous how all these fake archaeologists like Jimmy Corsetti are trying to build historical models off the pieces. These are just pieces of the parts, because it would literally take hundreds of thousands of men over 100 years to excavate all the sites that are in Turkey that are buried underground. Göbekli Tepe is just one. It's just one. All those sites, now that they're finding them by LiDAR over and over, more and more sites that are all buried, now they're realizing their initial claims are ridiculous. Oh, the site must have been holy, and they deliberately buried it. Shut up! All that material came from the sky. So, anyway. So we're at 3439 BC. We haven't traveled far. We're still in the antediluvian period. Still in the antediluvian period. World's already been destroyed 5 times. Process that. Hancock and Randall Carlson are always going to focus on the Younger Dryas rock from space narrative, but the historical record already shows us that the whole world's been destroyed 5 times since 5239 BC. But you're being told to ignore all this amazing data from old books and from real archaeology and science. Yeah, science has had something to say about all these dates. Go read my Chronicon. This is gaslighting to the nth degree. This is why I think Joe Rogan's in on it. It's gaslighting to the nth degree. The historical record is packed full of all these world-destroying cataclysms, but we're told to ignore them all to entertain an idea that a rock fell from space in the Younger Dryas, which has totally been dismantled in my research, where I show there is no age of Leo because the solar zodiac didn't exist. The Egyptians didn't build a sphinx, because of a Leo constellation. It is absolutely ridiculous, because the specialists on ancient Egypt tell you that they didn't even know a Leo constellation. That was a Greek import. But by the time the Greeks came around, Egypt had long fallen. They had already fallen to the Assyrians. They had already fallen to the Nubians. They had already fallen to the Persians. They had already fallen to the Ptolemies, the Syrians, the Seleucid Syrians. Egypt was already gone. Now it was cosmopolitan. By the time the Greeks entered and imported a Leo constellation. So there's no way you can date a Sphinx to the age of Leo because the Sphinx faces east. By that logic, Graham Hancock has literally dated Taco Bell's in Texas, which faced east, to 10,500 BC. Taco Bell was founded in 10,500 BC, according to Graham Hancock. That's not me. Don't get mad at me. I'm not being facetious. I'm going by his logic. Because Taco Bell's, a lot of them in Texas, face east, exactly where the constellation Leo would have been rising at the vernal equinox. Every Taco Bell that faces east was founded in 10,500 BC. That is Graham Hancock's thesis. It's retarded. It's absolutely stupid. And people still go for it. But he does have another data point that does kind of link things to the Younger Dryas. It's the only two arguments Graham Hancock has. The age of Leo Sphinx dating that Robert Schoch and Robert Bauval bought into, and Atlantis was 9,600 years BC, which we've totally collapsed that narrative. So the two main arguments that support Graham Hancock's theory have both been removed in Archaix. And yet still, Hancock, Carlson, Jimmy Corsetti, Matt LaCroix, all of them. This new guy, whatever he is, D. Dunker, nobody really takes him seriously. Yeah, if you don't take yourself seriously, no one else is going to take you seriously. But there's so many, Jay Anderson, there's so many that all fall for it and all steady push it, but they ignore the entire historical record in order to push a false narrative that has no supporting data. All that supporting data has been taken from them, and they still push it. So yeah, Joe Rogan's guilty. There's no doubt. He is not innocent here. And we're not done. This is just 5 world-destroying cataclysms since 5239 BC. This is in the last 72 centuries, guys. Almost 73 centuries. In the last 73 centuries, our world's already been destroyed and buried. Keep that in mind. It is absolutely important that by the end of this video that you understand how many times our world has been resurfaced and covered with new materials from somewhere else. That's what the human historical record is about. Carbonaceous material, all kinds of liquid stone like limestone in liquid state raining from the sky, red muds raining from the sky, red ice. Yeah, where's that coming from? How is ice falling from the sky? Sheets of ice, and it's all colored red. How's this happening? So, 3439 BC, the appearance of Enki, Enoch, Oannes, Vulcan, so many ancient heroes appear. Sumerian civilization begins. It's the pre-flood world. 241,200 shards of the Sumerian prism. The king list is about to begin. It matches the dragon kings of China, which was 646 years. Why do they call them dragon kings? Ask a Chinese scholar. He'll tell you, oh, it means they were dragon-faced. Oh, what does it mean to be dragon-faced? Oh, it just means to the ancient Chinese who were smooth-skinned, they had black eyes, straight black hair, olive skin, and they couldn't grow facial hair, the ancient Chinese. So when they saw men who were taller than them, they called them the shining ones. They called them the illumined ones. They didn't understand the concept of armor. And they had this hair growing from their face. And because dragons were the symbol of floods and wisdom, the Chinese called these intruders, who were like giants to them, they called them dragon-faced and dragon kings. To be dragon-faced means you can grow a beard. That's why dragons in China, in the parades, are all bearded. This was a very ancient concept that the ability to grow a beard meant that you were of the holy seed. You were of the race of Khan. I'm not talking about Genghis and Kaluga Khan. I'm talking about far more ancient than that. They were called the serpent seed. The race of Khan were the wisdom. They were like wisdom knights. They were the warriors, but they were known for their wisdom. They were technologically advanced. They were Caucasians. They had lapis lazuli eyes. The reason they use lapis lazuli is because there's no other blue minerals in the Tigris-Euphrates region by which they could have used for their statues. So they use lapis lazuli on all the statues of all the Sumerian kings. That's why you see all these blue-eyed bearded guys in ancient Sumer, when the Sumerians themselves prided themselves as being the black-headed people, and they couldn't grow facial hair. They had olive skin, straight black hair, and black eyes, just like the ancient Chinese, just like the ancient Aymara of the Urubamba Valley in Peru, just like the Indus Valley people of Mohenjo-Daro and Harappan civilization, the Yangtze River, Yellow Valley of China, all the same people, just like the Melampides of the Delta region of ancient Egypt, the Egyptians, just like the people of the Tigris-Euphrates basin. All these river delta peoples all had the same genetic traits. And when the intruders came by seagoing vessels, they were regarded as gods. They were the sons of gods. They were the mighty one. They were the Gibborim. They were the men of renown. And when they appeared, what did the locals do when they found out that they could get some chewing gum and t-shirts from them? What did they do? They offered their daughters, because that's what these men really needed. They brought weapons. And Book of Enoch lists all of it. Book of Enoch lists all the different trades and sciences and all these things. And this is how the sons of gods, this is how the sons of gods traded for the daughters of men. This is how the Watchers came and took the daughters of men, all which they chose, because the locals gave them to them. Their daughters became their trade wares. And this is how civilization was spread. The dragon kings were looked at in awe. They were looked at as benefactors, just like the 7 Anunnaki kings. In later traditions after the reset, after 2239 BC, after that object came out of Mul-Apen and started all Babylonian astronomy, the phoenix. After this event occurred, we have a lot of traditions about these civilization bringers and how altruistic they were. They were looked upon as benefactors. The sons of gods weren't looked at as demons and all that. They were looked upon as the same thing as in the same story. It's like the exact as Boquica in South America. It is the exact Central American belief of Quetzalcoatl. It's the exact same South American Aymaran pre-Incan traditions concerning Votan and Viracocha, the bearded stranger who disappeared over the sea, promising to one day return, who was actually the civilization bringer. And then because of a cataclysm involving the coming of the darkening of the sun, this god disappeared. It is the same story all over the world. So this story begins, the whole founding of this whole series of scenarios that I just provided you started in 3439 BC, and it lasted for 792 years. That's a long period of time. This is the pre-flood world. This is the period when Abydos was built, the Assyrian. This is the period of time when the Sphinx Temple, the Valley Temple. This is the period of time when Saqqara was built. This is the period of time when the entire Giza Plateau was designed. All the underground sub-basement levels, I think there's 8 of them, but I don't remember how many Ammianus Marcellinus, I don't think he knew, but Ammianus Marcellinus told us about the underground levels and galleries and chambers of rock underneath the Great Pyramid. Herodotus mentioned them too. I believe Diodorus Siculus and maybe Strabo, one of those two, mentioned them as well. We've been knowing about the underground complex beneath the Great Pyramid. Any scholar worth his metal has been knowing this. It's never been a secret. But that bullshit that's been going around social media, promoted by Billy Carson and others, about these giant cylinders that go down kilometers, man, shut up. Shut up. That's all stupid. It's all dumb. So 792 years of pre-flood history began after the pre-flood world started, and it ended before the pre-flood world ended. It's a unique 792 year period. Why is it unique? How many charts have you seen in Archaix where I show you that all these ancient calendars started during that period? They all started during that period of time when mankind became extremely advanced. All these ancient calendrical systems, whole chart showing you one line, all these calendars began at the exact same time. It was during this period. I may show that chart here when I wrap things up. 1 hour and 18 minutes. So this is 792 years is a very long period of time. The world has already been destroyed 5 times. 5 times, and it hasn't even been 2,400 years. And mankind comes back each time. Traditions and myths and the names of different culture heroes, they all change, but mankind's doing just fine. And now during 792 year period, we have benefactors showing up, civilization, and any anthropologist will tell you the anomalies of the 35th century BC. That's the date here. 3439 BC is the 35th century BC. And it is shown that the domestication of horses, domestication of dogs, domestication of cats, domestication of all kinds of other animals, shepherding, agriculture, canal works, massive canal irrigation systems, every bit of these appear for the first time in history in the 35th century BC. Massive works. Urbanization, the population explodes. They build all the great pyramids. They build whole stone cities. So the Sumerian records say there was 5 Sumerian cities. It was called the Pentapolis. So we know from the name Bad Tabira that it was a manufacturing district. Larak was a port. Larak was a port where ships went all over the world and came back. Larak, Bad Tabira. Shuruppak was a university city. It was like a center of learning. It was where all the libraries are. No, that was Sapar. I'm sorry, that was Sapar. Shuruppak was the administrative. It administrated the affairs of the empire. So we know it was huge because in this 792 year period, we have Enoch. He becomes he is chosen to be emperor over 130 kingdoms. This is in the book of Jasher, which is so interesting because the ancient Egyptian Copts had traditions that Surid, who built the pyramids, built them before the flood, same time as Enoch. And when he built them, it was during a period of time that in his reign, he ruled over 130 of the nomes of Egypt. It's the same story all over again. Enoch was the architect. So this is the same period of time right here. Stonehenge 1 is erected. Karnak is erected. Silbury Hill. For some reason, there was a huge infrastructure and building projects going on in what is the present day UK and in Egypt and Pumapunka all at the same time in South America. There's probably many other places like Metalinum in the Pacific. Metalinum is very unusual. We can't date it. We don't know. I think it's 1687 BC, but it's in the Pacific, and it's a city that's at a tilt. Here's the sea level. Here's the Pacific, and the city goes like this off an island. And scuba divers are always finding things deep in the city, but it's a giant stone megalithic city of immense basalt columns, and it has zero history. No one knows anything about this city. It's north of Easter Island. Thousands of miles north of Easter Island. Easter Island is the mystery island of the south with the giant statues, and the mystery island of the north is Metalinum. It is called in the islands of Yap, I believe, in the Carolines or something like that. I can't remember, but it's in the Pacific. The actual ruins are called Metalinum. All right. Let's see here. All right, we're moving along. That's 792 years when all this urbanization, all this infrastructure, everything was created at this time. And everything was created at this time. And then 2647 BC rolled around. In 2647 BC, the sun darkened. Really interesting. This is 408 years before the flood. 408 years is a huge amount of time. But I've now isolated this as the 408 years of the vapor canopy period. Phoenix darkens the sun, and we have no one else other than the controversial Zecharia Sitchin, who I'm a critic of. But Zecharia Sitchin shows the Chinese annals and he shows the Sumerian translations. And he makes a very compelling case. And he even says he doesn't know why, but it's at this period right here in the archaeological record. He said it was about 2637 BC, give or take. That's a bullseye. He says 2637 BC, around there, the sun darkened, the red dust fell from the sky, there was a major destruction, and the Anuna vanished. They took this opportunity during a cataclysm to vanish 792 years after they appeared. So bizarre. Zecharia Sitchin, yeah, it's all in Chronicon. You can check out Chronicon, look up 2647 BC. So it's so bizarre because this began the shock and awe. In Chronicon, you'll see it begins the abandonment and shock period. It is when all of a sudden civilizations are like, well, damn, what happened to the gods? Where are the gods? They've disappeared. Well, I have told you in prior presentations that I believe that if something is true at one period of time, it's probably true of all periods of time. And what I mean is that today, the establishment, our custodians are always giving us psyops, trying to make us believe. They've even educated us since we've been so little to believe that all anomalies can be explained by more mysteries out of the sky. If people end up disappearing, man, it's because of alien abduction. Yeah. If new technologies suddenly appear in the world, it's because aliens introduced it. If you see unusual things in the sky, or if unusual things fall from the sky, it's because it's brought by extraterrestrial civilizations. If you see unusual vehicles or movement in the sky you can't reconcile, it's because it's extraterrestrial activity. If really unusual three-dimensional messages and signals are being emitted from corn, wheat, and barley fields all across the northern hemisphere, and they leave these beautiful two-dimensional patterns in your fields. Oh yeah, it's because extraterrestrials are visiting, and those are messages to us. And none of these things are true. There's other explanations, as we've shown in Archaix. But the ancient world, they were gaslighted too. Just like the story of Enoch, saying Enoch disappeared and vanished because God took him and he raised him up into heaven. But no, because the Sumerian texts say that Enoch went through the 12 gates, just like Ninhursag. She ran through the 12 gates of the underworld. Remember, the Anunnaki have a title. That title is found in Sumerian cuneiform. The Anuna were specifically called the Masters of the Deep. When the Watchers appeared in the Book of Enoch, did they come from the sky and the heavens? No. They came down Mount Ardon. What does Mother Shipton say? That after the second sky dragon does its damage to the world, after that, there will be survivors all over the world, and then men in unusual clothing will come out of their mountain and collect the survivors and reinitiate civilization. An illiterate woman had a prophetic poem that said all this 500 years ago. So bizarre. So, men in tights. That's it. Men in tights. Yeah, man. Men in tights. So, Let's see here. Where was I at? So 2647 is interesting for another reason. For two reasons, chronographically. One is that it's linked to a 60-year period, the Nemesis X object. And indeed, the 60-year period from Nemesis X is happening at that time. The 60-year period was the period that brings unusual lizards and reptiles into our world. Remember that. So, but the connection Zecharia Sitchin made was that, hey, you know, the Chinese claimed that in 2637 BC, it was one of their 60-year periods that were holy to the gods. And Robert Temple had mentioned that the 60-year period was a part of an ancient Anunnaki cycle, and he's absolutely right. But this was 408 years before the actual Typhon flood. 408 years is a long time. But the Anuna disappear. It starts the shock and awe period. What do humans do that are left behind after this destruction? They start building mounds and effigies facing the sky as some type of ceremonial magic trying to get the gods to come back down. The gaslighting worked. The deception is real. We see the evidence today in what's called the Nazca patterns. On the Nazca, in the Bolivian Altiplano, the Nazca patterns face the sky, giant geometrical patterns of all kinds of animals facing the sky. These were supposed to be ceremonial rituals to induce the gods to come back down. Here are all the blessings we'll give you if you come back down. All over the world, serpent mounds, spider mounds, all kinds of different mound earthworks were put all over the world that could be clearly seen from the sky, but it didn't matter to the people of the earth what they looked like. They needed them to be recognizable from the sky. They wanted the gods to come back down, but actually the technologically advanced humans that duped them were underneath them in underground cities. We found those cities too. So same scenario that's playing out today. Same exact scenario. So this event recorded by Zecharia Sitchin is 408 years before the flood, which is so curious. It's so crazy because in Chronicon you can look and you will see that there's ancient American traditions of a 4,008 year period of time. And over we have seen that zero inserted where it did not belong. It's mistranslation. It's not 4,008, it's 408. And the chronographical identifier for Exodus, remember the Anuna disappeared. They used the cataclysm of the Nemesis X object in the 60-year tertiary field to leave. They're gone. Some of them stayed and they went into the underworld. Others vanished and disappeared. But what's so fascinating is this shock and abandonment period of the abandonment is 408 years, which is 204 plus 204. And 204 years is 2448 months. Only my Archaix veterans are going to know that number, the number of Exodus, 2448. Just like the Exodus of the Israelites was in the year 1447 BC. That's not my dating. I've showed you many presentations of all the different ancient sources that provided that date. Why is that interesting? The Israelites are leaving Egypt. They are departing from an evil world. This is the model given to us. It was the year 1447 BC of our calendar. But in the old world's calendar, 1447 BC is the year 2448. 2448 thus becomes the number for Exodus. Remember, 2106, the return of the chief cornerstone. 2106 AD is the return of the chief cornerstone. But when did the last days Giza countdown calendar begin? It began in 1902, which was a Phoenix year. 1902, amazing year. We'll get to it here in a little while. But 1902 is 204 years to 2106 AD, the return of the chief cornerstone and the number of Exodus, because 204 years is 2448 months. The Giza course countdown starts in 1902, the foundation of the pyramid, counting 203 courses all the way up the Great Pyramid to the flat part where the chief cornerstone sits. If you count all the way up to the top, don't miss one of them, you will count 203 levels. This is the year 2105 AD. You got to add the chief cornerstone for the 204th level. This 204th level creates the year 2106, which is 2448 months, the number of Exodus from 1902. The Great Pyramid is self-referencing, though, because it's 204 levels. But the apothegm, which is the measurement from the bottom of the pyramid to the top, a sloping distance is called an apothegm, from the bottom all the way to the chief cornerstone top. That apothegm is exactly 7,344 inches. You can't make this shit up. It's 612 feet. Why is that important? 612 feet is 7,344 inches, but 7,344 inches is precisely 2448 inches plus 2448 inches plus 2448 inches. It's Exodus plus Exodus plus Exodus. The number of 3 is the number of finality. It is when a thing is complete. So every bit of this is self-referencing. These are the 204 holy books of Esdras that we read in the Apocrypha. That's why the writings of Esdras were removed from the canon and put into the Apocrypha. Esdras told us too much about the future, about the tertiary fields and how the changes that are going to come in the human body and different stuff about time itself and what was going to be going on in the world during the tribulation. Ezra got too deep, but Ezra also gave up the game. In 1st and 2nd Esdras, we learn all about how divine entities taught Ezra the future. In Greek, it's Esdras, but Esdras took the divine information that was composed in 204 books. What is a book? It's just a container of knowledge. Every single level of the Great Pyramid, going all the way up, is a container of knowledge. How do we know? Because you need to go to my playlist and you need to look at my Great Pyramid playlist, and you will see that the entire Great Pyramid is full of nothing but calendrical knowledge, telling you the exact dates in rectilinear dimensions, going forward and backward in time, showing you the exact date of all the resets. That's what the Great Pyramid does. I've showed this many, many times. So this is that 792-year period. The world exploded with creativity, engineering, the population exploded. This is all during the pre-flood world. But it ended with the appearance of a vapor canopy and the disappearance of the gods. In the year 2647 BC, 408 years, Exodus plus Exodus, 2448 months plus 2448 months is 408 years to the Typhon flood, which is known popularly as the Great Flood of Noah. Man, it's taken 1 hour and 36 minutes to cover 3,000 years of history. And with the Great Flood, we don't need to go into detail about the Great Flood, but with the Great Flood, we are now at the 7th reset, destruction that our world has suffered according to the historical record. Do you see how ridiculous now the 12,000-year Younger Dryas impact hypothesis is becoming? There's nothing in the traditional record or historical record that goes back that far. We've already disproven the Egyptian and the Atlantis narratives. They do not connect to the Younger Dryas. They've got nothing but hyperbole and conjecture and imagination. And Graham Hancock says it all the time. But what if? But what if? Man, go sit on it. What if? Yeah, man. It's, what if you ain't CIA? You're still dumb. It's so stupid. to ignore all this verifiable information, to ignore all of it, to throw explanations so far into the past they have no value to anyone today, other than making a buck online to fool a bunch of dumbasses. But 2239 BC is the 7th total systemic reset. The Great Flood is a bad one, though. The Great Flood of Noah, because this one, if you go into Ignatius Donnelly's material about the Typhon flood and what really happened, this is the day the sky fell. And we learn from the historical record that the vapor canopy was only 4 centuries. It wasn't the whole pre-flood world. It was 400 years, which is still a long period of time. So 2239 BC, in the month of May, the Phoenix appears. It's known as the Typhon flood. Our world is buried. It's buried in red mud. Red mud, red rain, the sky falls down, the vapor canopy literally drains, and then all this wet, muddy world is then, it's baked. It's baked like clay in a kiln because there's nothing in the sky. With the collapse of the vapor canopy, the mesosphere empties, and we don't have enough atmospheric materials to protect us from something we've never experienced in 4 centuries, which was the return of the sun. This is what started all the ancient sky calendars and the birth of the sun. What was the very first sun? In all the American sun calendars, what's the very first sun? It's the water sun. Why do they call it the water sun? I don't know. Suns are fiery, but for some reason, the fiery sun came out of a watery sky. We don't get it. We don't get it. But Jason does. The vapor canopy collapsed, and when it did, the Sumerians had to add a new god, and they called him Utu Shamash, the sun. The Babylonians had to add a new god, and when they added the new god, they called him Horus. Why did they add a new god? Because Horus had to take over from Osiris, because Osiris had been killed and cut into 14 pieces. What had he been killed by? He'd been killed by Typhon. What is Typhon? The phoenix. Everything fits. That's the beauty of the Archaix model. We do not practice exclusions. Everything must fit. And it does. You don't have to force fit anything at all. So we're not going to go into detail about the Great Flood because we've already got that covered so much. It was in the month of May. It is the year 1656. Many ancient books talk about the year 1656. It was the year of the Great Flood. Rashi, year of the Great Flood, 1656. The book of Genesis, if you add up all 10 patriarchs, life and death periods, all biblical scholars will tell you there are none that deviate. They will all tell you, yeah, man, it's the pre-flood world in the book of Genesis was 1,656 years. This is divisible by 138. This is the Phoenix timeline. So it's also it's also 3 Phoenix cycles. A Phoenix cycle is 552 years, but 3 of them is 1656 years. So this is the Phoenix, which in ancient Sumerian was called the Apin. This is the event that began Babylonian astronomy. You just saw my recent video called Mul Apin. This is the event, the Great Flood, the Typhon flood. This is the event that started Babylonian sky gazing and recording omen texts and all this. This is lamentation text, all that. This is the Mul Apin astronomy of ancient Babylon. It began because the Phoenix destroyed the ancient world, and they documented it. So, vapor canopy collapses. It's the birth of the sun. The Heliolithic age begins. We are no longer in the Technolithic. The Technolithic was before the flood during that 792 years of Golden Age period. That's Technolithic period. Post-Technolithic period was the period called shock and awe. The post-Technolithic period is when humans, during a vapor canopy period, still had Anuna technology. But the Anuna themselves had made their exodus, some into the underworld, into the bowels of the great deep, others Nemesis X through a tertiary field. Call it a portal, I don't care. But they left during the 60-year window of Nemesis X. This is when the mandate of heaven changed, according to the ancient Chinese. A new star had appeared, and hundreds of cities were shoved under the sea. Coastal cities were wiped out. Worldwide volcanism and fallout from Phoenix. Red dust, red rain, red mud, and volcanic resurfacing destroyed the world. Quakes, subsidence, upheaval, tsunamis, mud floods, cosmic dust fallout, temporal pole shift. It's all in 2239 BC. Why is this important? Because layers and layers and layers of destruction are being deposited from the sky onto the world. And the layers that are already on the world are liquefying. Liquefaction is created by seismic activity when the ground vibrates to such a degree that solid materials literally liquefy. This happens so many times in history. You got to understand how these ancient places became buried, like Göbekli Tepe and all these and all the Huyuk sites in the lower parts of Jericho. You got to understand why dirt and sand in this red material that's been found in archaeological sites all over the world, and why the ancients buried their dead in red ochre, why this was going on. This fallout comes from the sky. It is cyclical. But when it does, it blankets our world. This is why forests, whole entire forests, are found underground. They're called polystrate fossils. They're everywhere. So this is only 2239 BC. We've only covered 3,000 years of the traditional and chronological record of the human race. That's all we've covered, and the world's already been destroyed 7 times. Keep that in mind, because I have a question to ask you at the end of this video that's going to blow your mind up. 7 times the world has been destroyed. So, you know what? I've been going off. I haven't drunk anything this whole time. All right. I see you, Vincent. They need to get their pronouns correct. It's good shit. So now we have a really interesting scenario developing after the Great Flood, the Typhon flood of Noah. 276 years later. It's plenty of time. It's plenty of time to recover. There were survivors all over the world. Remember the Ark of Noah and the boat of Manu? These are oversimplifications of what really happened. These survivors were leading arcs of survivors. There were arcs full of the people, the traditions, the libraries, a lot of these arcs were lost. A bunch of these arcs ended up getting sunk, crashing on mountains. Those people died. Some of them that survived the flood maybe starved later. I don't know, but not all. But we have evidence from the historical record that it was fleets of arcs that had been prepared. The Great Flood was foreknown. It was not something that caught the world by surprise. It was foreknown. It was the 3,000th year since the Nemesis Cataclysm. 5239 BC. But 276 years later, just as Sumerian culture, which was now early Akkadian, late Sumerian, was recovering, 276 years later, we have an incident that's also recorded in the Hindu Ramayana, and in the days of Rama. Rama is the same as Mara, who later became Mardon, Marduk, Merodach, and then later Amar Udaak. It's all the same person. Genesis calls him Nimrod. It is all the same. It's all the same ruler. His mother was Semiramis the First, not Semiramis the Second. Semiramis the Second was over the Neo-Babylonian Empire in the 11th century BC. This is Semiramis the First. She was part Titan, part giant. And these are just different stages of humans. The survivors of the Great Flood became later known as the Titans. No more Titans could be born because that world, the vapor canopy, was gone. In the new world, the Titans had been weakened. But when a Titan and a Titan had a child after the flood, that child was a giant. Not as big as the Titans, but they were giants. But they didn't regard themselves as giants during their generation because it was their children that would look back at their parents and realize that their parents were giants and that their parents were Titans. Their grandparents were Titans. After the vapor canopy collapsed, after the new world appeared, it was a harsher world. It was harder to survive. It was a cold world. Titans, the few surviving Titans gave birth to giants. Surviving giants gave birth to like half giants. The half giants gave birth to normal size humans. Normal size humans, multiplying like rabbits, doing what they like to do, they filled the earth and they began to resent the Lugals. Yes, in the Sumerian text, we have the race of giants were called Lugals. I've even showed you on my channel in Babylonian law, where they even had to create legislation in order to protect the common man from the Lugals, because the Lugals were so big that they could just talk people into selling them things cheaper than that they were worth. And laws were set in place, Amorite laws were set in place to keep the Lugals in check, so the common man could get their fair value at the market and not be intimidated by the size of the Lugals. You can't make this shit up. This is all a few centuries after the last vapor canopy collapse. It's 276 years after the vapor canopy collapsed in 2239 BC, when we have another temporal pole shift. And the moon and the sun begin to play false. The calendars are corrupted. That no one knows what to do, and it's over with pretty fast. But it's well documented in the Sumerian and in the ancient Hindu, in the days of in the Ramayana. There's this pole shift. It's also documented in Hesiod. So this was 1963 BC, when Amar Udaak was a young, strapping young man who had a habit of hunting giants. He himself was part giant ancestry. He later adopted a formal name in Akkad, and many scholars have attributed this person as being the son of Sargon the First, but it's not true. They're the same individual. It's two different dynasties. He does become Shahrukh, which is Sargon the First, but another dynasty that comes in and makes him a ruler called him Naram Sin. And on the stele of Naram Sin, you can see him. He's twice as tall as anybody he's battling. Got a horned helm, and he's at the top of a mountain. And at the top of the mountain is a clear Sumerian sigil called a dingir, which means a star, which identifies him as part divinity. So this is 1963 BC. The giants are waning, but they're not all gone. As a matter of fact, most people don't know, the very first war mentioned in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 14 and 15, and it is a war where normal-sized humans from the east are invading 5 lands of giants. They are fed up. The first war humans are in the Bible is against giants. The Confederation was under a ruler named Chedorlaomer. So this is 276 years after the flood, which is 138 plus 138. But 276 years after this temporal pole shift, for which we don't have a whole lot of data, was the Great Ogygian Deluge of 1687 BC. So 276 years plus 276 years to the Ogygian Deluge is 552 years of Phoenix cycle, with the epicentral year being 1963 BC pole shift. 1687 BC thus becomes, we already know what happened, total volcanic resurfacing, oceans slipping their basins, red mud, red fallout all over the world. Pay attention. Pay attention. This is the 9th time this has happened since 5239 BC. And any of you who have read my Chronicon knows how much data that supports all this. And those who have watched all my videos know that I have added a tremendous more from all these new books I've read that I did not read when I wrote Chronicon. 1687 BC, the Archaix deluge was caused by the Phoenix. It is 552 years after the flood of Noah. And yet, this is the 9th time our world has been resurfaced. This is the 9th time our world has been buried, whole cities and civilizations buried alive. Not just from volcanoes blowing up all over the place, but because of the fallout, Phoenix fallout, all over from the sky. But we need to go another 276 years. Remember, takes 200 years to go from horse and buggy to Hadron Collider. Look at the distance in time between all these resets. 276 years after the Archaix deluge is 1411 BC. What happens then? Rocks and material and fallout from the sky actually help the Israelites defeat the Canaanites. The sun darkens. It's all in the book of Jasher. It's also in the Old Testament as well. How Joshua made the sun stop moving. Because 1411 BC, the sun stopped moving, and all this crazy stuff happened, and rocks fell out the sky, and the Canaanites weren't defeated by the Israelites. They were defeated by rocks falling out the sky. Resurfacing. So this is 1411, and we have a lot of data on that. I'm just kind of oversimplifying it because it was another temporal pole shift, because there's no way in the hell that the sun would stop moving in the sky to let the Israelites have enough time to kill everybody after the rocks already hurt them. There's no way in the hell that's true. If the sun stopped in the sky, then we're talking about a temporal pole shift, because the sun's not going to stop. It's the earth, according to the model that's been given to us. So either the sun is local and it can be stopped, or the sun is 93 million miles away, which means the earth stopped moving. I don't care which model you adopt. Either one of them, 1411 is still a date on the Phoenix phenomenon. It's on the 138-year periodicity of the Phoenix. So, also the sky turned bloody red and all that. That was 276 years after the Archaix deluge, 138 plus 138. But 276 years further is the destruction of Atlantis in 1135 BC. It is the final inscription of the Egyptian pharaoh Seknakti, who wrote that the world was falling apart, and that in the far west a great darkness had obscured the sky, and that there were earthquakes, and he complained about the Sea People's Federation invading. This was right after the Trojan War. 1135 BC started the Great Mediterranean Dark Age. I suspect it was another vapor canopy, because for 300 years we have nothing in the historical record after that, until the rise of Hesiod, Homer, Theognis, all in the 8th century BC, 700s. They're the first poets, and they're talking about these events in the Dark Age that started the Dark Ages. But they're not talking about anything that happened from that period 300 years in the past to when they started writing about it. It is literally a 300-year Mediterranean Dark Age caused by the Phoenix. You guys already know from seeing my Atlantis material, you know Atlantis disappeared in 1135 BC. It was 92 years after the war against Athens. Just like Plato said, Atlantis disappeared in a day and a night, and it was after the war against Athens. And this couldn't have happened in the Younger Dryas because Athens wasn't around. It couldn't have happened in the Younger Dryas at 9,600 BC because the Egyptian civilization didn't exist back then as well. It's all dumb. Hancock lied to you in a book called Fingerprints of the Gods. And he literally said to the public in that book that there's zero evidence that the Egyptians ever factored a year as 30 days. He had to say that lie because the truth is just the opposite. There are innumerous citations from ancient authors that all said that the Egyptians factored a year as 30 days. And then those ancient authors even gave examples like 35,000 Egyptian years is only 12 centuries in our reckoning. They said this, but Hancock lied to you and then supported that lie with a bibliographic citation. Put a little number there to make it look like it was authoritative because he couldn't have you looking it up. He didn't want anybody to look up the fact that 9,000 years of Solon was 9,000 moons. Exactly what Eudoxus published, and Eudoxus lived with Plato, who wrote the story. Can't make this shit up. Hancock put a bibliographic citation in his book to get you to think that his lie had academic authority. But I looked it up. I looked up that bibliographic citation and I showed it to you in my video, Fingerprints of the Grift. And in that video, one of my moderators, please post that video, Fingerprints of the Grift, exposing Hancock. And when you look up that bibliographic citation, you find out Hancock cites himself as an authority. What a shill. Absolute shill. That's a shill move. Hope you heard that, Rogan. That's the type of guy you keep inviting to your channel. Total shill. So, the Atlantis narrative, 1135 BC, now begins a long period of time. This is when classical civilization explodes. This is the history of the world that we've all become familiar with. This is the collegiate versions. This is what's taught to us. Most of the stuff in Archaix is not taught. I've had to find this in old books and all kinds of old chronographical records and put all this material together. But starting now, with the 8th century BC, 7th century BC, now we have 1,104 years to 31 BC. Now we have the Persians, we have the Assyrians rise, we have Egypt dynasties rise, we have the Persian-Assyrian wars, the battles of Kadesh. I have all kinds of massive ongoings. Civilizations are taking on the forms that we've been accustomed to learning about in high school and in college. Persia takes over Egypt. The Syrians take over Egypt. The Seleucids, the Greek Macedonian Ptolemies take over Egypt. This is the period of time. It's 1,104 years, and there's no worldwide destructions. There's just a whole bunch of regional ones. Thousands of cities have perished, but it's only small destructions here and there, and they get buried. Remember my video where I showed the other dimensions of Phoenix, where I showed that even all these other destructions still comports to the 138 year sequencing of Phoenix. It's just 138 divided by pi or divided by phi, 1.4, 3.14 or 1.618. Our physics constants are literally showing us they're attached to calendars and the events that occupy them. So we have 1,104 years of history to the year 31 BC. And in the year 31 BC, things do get bad. Things do get bad. Not so much in the Roman world. Not so much in the Roman world at all. But 31 B, after 1,104 years in 31 BC, the ancient Americas were wiped off the map. The Olmec civilization vanishes. 31 BC in our calendar is the final year of an Olmec date steal, and the Olmecs never recorded anything afterward. So, the Olmecs were reset, and when they reappeared, they were the Maya. These aren't separate cultures. It's the same culture. One is pre-reset, one is post-reset. me find that. 31. So we have records about the destruction from the Chinese Han Dynasty. We have the Macedonian records, continental quakes from the Aegean to Judea. Yeah, this is considered one of the worst earthquakes Jerusalem has ever suffered. The earthquake went all the way through Syria, Lebanon, Turkey, Greece, and in Greece, Olympia was even destroyed in 31 BC. Earthquakes in Macedonia. The earthquakes continued during the Battle of Actium in the month of May. The Battle of Actium was a Roman civil war. Between Octavian and what is his name? Antony, and Cleopatra of Egypt. Let's see. The Yucatan was completely wrecked. A sky dragon was seen flying over Egypt. This would definitely be the Phoenix, but this is 31 BC. So this may have been hemispheric, meaning the Americas and the Pacific got wiped out. However, residual stuff like earthquakes and some volcanic resurfacing and liquefaction and tsunamis happened in other places of the world, and there was sky fallout, but most of the fallout would have been Central America for this period here. And that's after 1,104 years of just small local resets, local destructions, which didn't affect whole kingdoms and empires. It just affected those cities. This affected whole races of people and kingdoms. So there's a 552-year period that begins here, that goes to the beginning of the Dark Ages in 522 AD. But it's during this period we have some other highly localized resets. And this is, closer we get in time, we see evidence of these localized destructions, but we have to count them because localized destructions have happened everywhere after the passage of so many years. So like Mount Vesuvius in Italy, 79 AD, Pompeii and Herculaneum were buried. What is that? That's resurfacing. What's really interesting about that, archaeologists found out that Pompeii and Herculaneum are directly above older cities that are directly beneath them. Totally buried and unknown to the Romans from what's called the Avellino event. Scientists date those ruins and those human bodies buried alive in the Avellino event to approximately 1700 BC. That's the Ogygian deluge. 1687 BC is 1700 BC scientifically. So Phoenix resurfaces the world with materials all the time. Sometimes it's volcanic, sometimes it's sky fallout, red dust, red rain, red mud. You guys already know, over and over and over. That's what Phoenix does. But this 552-year Phoenix cycle ends in 522 AD, and that's our next year. And I don't have to go into detail about that as well, because 522 started the Dark Ages, the great 25-year Justinian darkness period. This is what started 400 years of almost nothing in the historical record. This is what's confused flamenco, this whole period. This is the period that a lot of the people that promote the Tartaria narrative focus in on as well. So the people that foment the Satan's little season narrative also talk about this Justinian period. This period here, as I've shown in Archaix, was another vapor canopy. And what that vapor canopy brought into our world has been widely suppressed. But in archaeology, we see it very clearly. But we're not going to get into that. We got several videos about this period, the Dark Ages, and what really happened. What you need to know for all intents and purposes for this study here, and for my question at the end of this video, what you need to know here is 522 AD, the great Justinian darkness period that started the Dark Ages. The only year in history that the Phoenix object and the Nemesis X object were in the sky in the same year. The only year in history. This is the 14th documented reset destruction of our world since 5239 BC. 14 times our world has been basically destroyed. 14 times. The fallout in 522 is all over the world. I believe it was a total systemic reset for Britain, ancient Britain as well. A lot of research. I think Commons Beaumont also talks about that as well. But the great flood, the Typhon flood of Noah, was the 7th total systemic worldwide reset. This 522 AD is the 14th total systemic worldwide reset. And this started the Dark Ages. And this is one that our own historians actually agree to. They just won't tell us what really happened because they don't know. Yeah. Science has not even caught up yet to vapor canopies. So this began a 690-year period. 690 years is a phenomenal long time. The problem is about 360 of those years was vapor canopy. There was no development. So during this 690-year period, it's very intriguing. The world suddenly woke up around the year 1000. Stone castles, the Normans, the great Norman engineering, they start building all these stone castles, stone churches. Even though a whole city only had one stone building, and it was the castle, or it was the church, they would build these elaborate constructions, and they got really good at it. And then the universities began to appear in the 11th century. With the universities, a lot of knowledge flooded into Europe from the Middle East. And in the year 1212 AD, the 690th year, 690 is divisible by 138. But in the year 1212, we had all kinds of pandemonium and chaos. Let me read it for you real quick. What happened in 1212? I don't have that memorized. You do know that 1212 is the very first time Tartaria entered the historical record. Oh, yeah, I got it right here. Okay, let me share my screen. I may as well just share my screen since I'm doing all this. Get rid of this. Get rid of this on. Remove. Get rid of this. Share my screen. I'm moving faster now, guys. Bear with me. I'm not going to make this video last forever. All right. So here's 1212 AD. It's 690 years after the beginning of the Dark Ages in 522 AD. 1212 AD, mass vanishing, the Children's Crusade. We've talked about that. I'm not going into detail. I've already got videos about these. Children's Crusade. It is the first year of Tartaria. Remember, I have a video called I don't know what it's called, but it has the Annals of Tartaria, and I give you year by year everything that was in Tartarian history that we have documented, showing you from the old books, and then how Othman the Tartarian founded the Ottoman Empire of the Muslim Turks. So that's 1212 is when Tartaria enters the historical record in old books. These are quakes throughout the Middle East. 306,000 people drowned in a Holland tsunami. They were actually pulled out to sea. Blood rains on France. A comet is seen in May. That's Phoenix. Quakes in May in Italy and Damascus. Tsunami swept thousands out to sea in Sicily. Goose egg size hail in Italy. Bavarian quake lasted for over a year. People lived in the open fields. They didn't want to be around the castles and the walls and stones and towers. For a whole year, people just moved out into the countryside because the earthquakes just never stopped. Thracia became the land of crows. That means, for some reason, all the Thracians died. 3,000 disappeared from a London in fire. Yeah, from 3,000 people disappeared from London in a fire. You have to understand too, when we're reading these citations, guys, this is just what we've uncovered, and it may not be all what's in my notes, but the historical record is going to be packed with a bunch of things. We've lost those citations. We don't have access to that information anymore. So many things have been suppressed. All right. So that was 690 years. So around the year 880, the 900 AD, the vapor canopy dissipates. It kind of disappears. In the early Christian church, there's a lot of evidence that they were still, the vapor canopy world was still an influence. Remember, Jesus was Lord of the mushrooms. Mushrooms and snails were huge, and George and the Dragon fighting large lizards and salamanders. Remember the Colburn Bible reference when the nemesis when the doom shape appears, sand and earth rain from the sky with reptiles. Remember the song Parthenogenesis? Parthenogenesis literally telling you prehistoric nemesis brings prehistoric animals. All right, yeah, that's crazy. So anyway, this is 690 years, which is divisible by 138 to the year 1212. These vanishings, these people, tertiary field, people disappear. Now, but if we count another 690 years, lands us at the year 1902, when the phoenix on the Great Seal was changed to the bald eagle. Quietly. Congress has never given us an explanation as to why they did that. In the year 1902, they changed the Great Seal from the Pyramid of Egypt and the phoenix to the Pyramid of Egypt and a bald eagle. So this is 690 years later to 1902. And in 1902, we know what happened. We've got so much stuff that happened. Maybe I'll just itemize it. So in May, an unknown star appeared in the sky. It was red. It was followed by quakes, volcanic eruptions, red rains, dust veils. Charles Fort called 1902 that other dark age, after he documented all these things. 1902, a farmer plowing a field near La Majora in the mountains of Veracruz State discovered the Tuxtla statuette, later acquired by the Smithsonian Institute. It was a squat, bullet-shaped head, looked Ubaid, human with a duck bill and wings, covered in 75 Epi-Olmec glyphs. Its own inscribed long calendar date is March 162 AD, which is amazing. Which in 1902 made it the oldest long count calendar found. That was in 1902. So the reason 162 is really interesting, and that this artifact would date to the year 162, and it even shows a creature with a duck bill, a demon with wings and all that, is because 162 is a Nemesis X date. So bizarre. Remember, Phoenix and Nemesis X are always self-referencing. They involve tertiary fields. Artifacts are found in 1902 that happen to have associations to the tertiary field exact dates of Nemesis X appearances in the past. And that's not the only artifact. I've showed several. All right. Let's see. Phoenix again transited, bathing the world in hundreds of millions of tons of red dust. And, we've gone through it many times. Many times we've gone through the data and showed how in 1902, this fallout was everywhere. Australia and New Zealand got it bad. China got it bad. This red dust and red mud fallout all over the world. in 1902. But I got so much stuff on 1902, man. I think there's 6 videos on Archaix, maybe 7 videos on Archaix, just about the year 1902. Here's another summary of 1902. 1902, this is on a chart. New star appears, red rain, red dust, red mud, blankets, countries all over the world. 2 volcanoes kill 60,000 people in the French Caribbean. 3rd volcano kills thousands. Transcaucasian earthquake. Guatemala, quake and volcano kills 12,200. The sky over Devon, England filled with colored suns. 10-pound hailstones fall on China. Cyclone tornado activity is all over the world in 1902. Volcano in Japan kills 150. A quake in Central Asia kills 3,000. The whole northwest of the United States sky darkens. It's later theorized to be smoke from fire. Quake in Guam. Second Guatemalan volcano called Darkness of Quetzaltenango. Wow. Mud rains on Tasmania. Fireballs fall over Australia. Australia is bathed in red mud. A second Russian Central Asian quake kills another 2,500. And this is just what we've documented. There's probably still a lot more about 1902. Remember the edits in 1902 too. Don't forget all the edits. All the weird things that appeared suddenly in our world in 1902 without precedent. I can't make this shit up. So the Dark Ages in 522 was a 690-year period to 1212 AD. And then 1212 AD was a 690-year period to 1902. And then 1902 is a 138-year period to 2040. That's the event we're waiting on right now, is 2040. The phenomena will really begin in 2039. Just like 1764, in the month of May, astronomer Hoffman saw 1/5 of the sun obscured by an object that came out of the northern node, northern heavens, and astronomers didn't believe him, but they couldn't call him a liar because he was so prestigious. But 500,000 Europeans also saw the same object with the naked eye. It just blew the Astronomical Society's mind, and they didn't want to believe it because they never saw any evidence from the historical record that any objects moved on a north to south trajectory, passing over the ecliptic, passing over the surface of the sun. And if anything, at that in that descending node, it would have to be a truly gigantic object to cover 1/5 of the sun's surface. Because even Venus, which is in between us and the surface of the sun, is a tiny little dot on a giant orb. So for something to cover 1/5 of the sun size, it would be a Jupiter-sized or bigger object, and they just couldn't believe something like that could stay hidden. But astronomer Hoffman said it came out of the north, black space, passed over the surface of the sun, and then disappeared into the blackness of southern space. It's exactly the same plane of movement of Nemesis X, the dark satellite. It's where our moon appeared, and it's the same plane we'll be back on in 2046 when time collapses, according to the Mayan long count. These are things we've talked about many times. So now I'm going to share my screen one last time, and I'm going to ask you a question. So share my screen. All right, get this out the way. We're wrapping this up. We are wrapping this up. There is no way. We're talking 17 times. 17 times, 14 times really bad. But 17 times, our world has been destroyed. Now, out of those 17 times, 3 of them were probably hemispheric. But still, in between all of these 17 major resets, there are thousands of minor ones, as I show in my Chronicon. Let me give you an example. So this is a bad example right here. But all of this didn't belong here. What is this right here? This is, all these cycles and epicycles, all these are reset destructions. Oh, this is Hancock's BS right here. This is a chart showing how stupid Hancock's theory is about 10,500 BC. Look at this right here. This is just from the year 1009. You've seen this video. This is a long video and it is packed full of data. But all these historical incidents right here are all highly localized resets where all kinds of strange phenomena happen. But this stuff has been happening since the beginning of the world. We don't have access to document it all. So all these resets, all these charts show reset dates and the cycles and epicycles of reset dates. When you have so much resurfacing, look at all these cataclysms. These are epic major This is a cataclysm timeline right here. World destroying events starting in 5239 BC. This is an old chart too, right here. Look at all the Phoenix visitations. A bunch of them I didn't cover because the fallout, the red rain, red mud, sun darkening, volcanic resurfacing, all the ash and carbonaceous material fallout, and all these red dots you see up here was local or hemispheric. So I didn't cover them. The black dots, look at all the Nemesis X appearances. Again, some of them are hemispheric. Most of the black dots are the whole world or hemispheric. There's so many of them. This chart can't even cover them all. This chart begins with 522 AD, and this black circle is the Dark Ages. And when we come out of the Dark Ages, look, all of a sudden, Oxford University, Paris University, St. Denis Cathedral, Durham Castle, Spire Cathedral, Pisa Cathedral, University of Bologna, Stone Castle building period, Crusader Wars of the Normans. Look, all this started only after the canopy was gone for the Dark Ages. The canopy had to go first. Then humans were able to build again and do all kinds of things and be able to multiply. This chart is actually about the history of star forts, showing that they're not old. This yellow circle here is the history of, this is when star forts were built. The video for this actually concerns star forts and why they were built the way they were built, and because the whole style of warfare had changed. Yeah, a lot of the guys that follow the Tartaria shit, they hate my guts now. I'm cool with that. I really don't care anymore. I'm beyond giving a damn. This is a chart that shows just this 817-year period right here before the flood. This is how much historical data we have for all kinds of events. This is 817-year period way back here before the flood cataclysm that you see here. Every event you see here is dated. So many times different areas were destroyed. Phoenix fallout, Nemesis fallout, Dark Satellite fallout, and sometimes just regional destructions that have nothing to do with any of these reset protocols that I've identified. So many different Phoenix events. This chart, this is a Phoenix chart, but the reason it's different is you look at the deal down here. Black star is a worldwide destruction, total lithospheric displacement or temporal pole shift. The red one is vast hemispheric localized regional destructions. The yellow one is observed in the sky, but little recorded evidence of destruction. And the white one is abundant evidence of destruction, but no recorded observance of Phoenix. See, this is all very organized. Even though these destructions are on the exact Phoenix dates, nothing in the sky is reported in the historical record. The only evidence that Phoenix was near us was because there was a massive destruction on that date. So this is the Mayan long count. This is another way of looking at all the Phoenix data. This Phoenix chart is different too. You see all the symbols? The symbols mean something. You can look up every one of these symbols on these Phoenix dates. This chart shows you a different way of looking at Phoenix. Here's the legend. It's either a world cataclysm, sun darkens. It's a regional disaster, sun darkens. A circle is phoenix observed. A circle with a dotted line around it is a vapor canopy began. A diamond means this specific event in the historical record was affirmatively dated in the month of May. The reason Phoenix destructions always happen in May is because it's the only time our world is on Sol's ecliptic and the Nemesis ecliptic at the exact same time. The month of May is the only time we're on both ecliptics. It's how the world moves. It's the transect period. Well, I'm lying. There is another time. The other time is early November. The dolmen, that dolmen symbol means that the Phoenix event was accurately predicted, and this little star means a new star appeared in the heavens, according to that tradition. All kinds of different ways of looking at the data. Here's the Sumerian king list and the Chinese dragon kings. The yellow circle is in the historical record exactly where scholars put the 7 kings of Sumer. The white circle is where the Chinese put the the dragon kings of China. There they are right there. It's the same dynasty. We've already been through all these charts showing how the Nur is actually, showing how the Yuga system is actually based off the Nur. So, looking at this world timeline, looking at all these cycles and epicycles of resets, total destructions of our world, vapor canopies coming and going. That's what these charts are. Looking at resets through the distribution of megalithic analysis. That's what this chart is. There's all kinds of ways at looking at the same thing through different lenses. So I'm going to conclude this video. With a question. I'm going to sum it up real quick. If we have 18 confirmed, easily verifiable times when our world has been totally destroyed, and we have thousands of more that all can be confirmed in local areas happening at different times that are not on those major reset deals. We have all this volcanic resurfacing, redistribution of soil materials. If we have all this blanketing fallout, volcanic resurfacing, carbonaceous material, red rain, red dust, cosmic dust, all this stuff falling on our world during and layered in water and all this stuff, then how in the hell, after a whole 7,000 years of all this documentation, are we finding dinosaur footprints and human footprints and vehicle tracks all on the surface? We don't even have to dig for them. How do we find dinosaur fossils and skeletons on the surface? How are we finding things that are supposed to be millions of years old all over the world on the surface? All you got to do is put some hiking boots on and go to remote areas most people don't go to, and you're going to find something. How in the hell are we finding petrified human footprints, petrified vehicle tracks, and petrified dinosaur prints, all in the same locations, in the same strata, all exposed to sunlight, all over the damn world, despite this history? And yet, beautifully made silver inlaid and gold bells, bobby pins, rings, bracelets, nails, even screws, pieces of hammers, actual hammers, unidentifiable tools, eating utensils, bowls, even beautiful amphorae, wagon wheels. How in the hell are we finding all these things buried thousands of feet underground and often in coal seams when dinosaur prints are on the surface? That's my presentation, guys. Your answer doesn't even interest me. I'm just trying to get you to think. That's all I'm trying to get you to do. I've got videos that answer that question. I love you guys. I had a great time with this one. I had a great time with this one. You're new to my channel and you have no idea what I'm talking about. I've got videos that answer that question and show you the business. But this is why I am aggressive, and I'm going to continually call out these shills, and they're going to continually run from me because they don't want to hear it. They don't want to face this data. They don't want to look stupid on camera when they can't, when they start hearing about, well, hold on, where'd you get that date from? Oh, it's already been affirmatively carbon dated. Oh, wait. Did you know that this university, this scientific foundation, did you know this billionaire? Did you know about all these people who actually tested the same samples and came out with carbon dates that were 60 million years old when it's not even supposed to date things that old? And they came out with carbon dates of 5,000 and 6,000 years old for something that they were given to them was known to only be 22 years old. Yeah. None of those relative dating models are true. They're all bullshit. And I can't wait for somebody to want to debate that because I'm going to embarrass them. There is so many tests that have been done showing that they're all fraudulent. Every bit of it's fraudulent. The hell are petrified dinosaur prints? What the hell are prehistoric reptilian and amphibian fossils and skeletons doing on the surface when human shit is thousands of feet underground, pulled up from mines, boring wells, oil and gas companies, and coal miners? Human artifacts in coal seams thousands of feet below the surface. So crazy. It is absolutely moronic what we have been led to believe. So moronic. Matter of fact, it's so moronic, I'm going to find one. I'm going to find one. Let me find one real quick. Since we're talking about dumbass shit, let me find a perfect example. Yeah, man. Love you guys.
Ooh, Jimmy. Oh, Jimmy. You thought you could hide in the sands of time, but the truth's coming down like a phoenix fire from Archaix. The hammer falls. Of the rich at you spin your web of lies, claiming Atlantis rose there under desert skies. But Plato's words are twisted in your grifter's game. 9600 BC, man, that's just lame. You run from debates like a coward in the night. Hancock's your buddy, but you both ain't right. Younger, driest dreams all crashing down while you're chasing views in your conspiracy town. Göbekli Tepe, you lie about the stones. Pottery dates left them buried like bones. Unfinished pillars, backfilled in haste. Cataclysm hit, but you call it a waste. You get so upsetty when the facts come to light. Personal attacks, yeah, you're spoiling for a fight. Accusing folks of faking cancer, that's low. But Archaix is here, stealing the show. Jimmy upsetting, oh, you're burning out. Grifter in the desert, full of doubt. Chill for the masses, pushing Nazi shit. But the truth from Archaix, it's a perfect hit. Run, Jimmy, run from the debate stage. Your theories crumble in the simulated cage. Upsetting spaghetti, tangled in your lies. The world's waking up, saying goodbye. Billy Carson's crew, Randall's wild ride. You all huddle up, but there's nowhere to hide. Matt the Crow whispers, Bible draws the lines, but your star alignment's just wasting our time. David Axe echoes, Sitchin's old tales. You peddle the fiction while the real data prevails. Pee-wee reads maps, you claim Ice Age art, but no metal plates, no ancient hearts. Sensational clicks, that's your only fuel, while Archaix drops bombs, making you look the fool. Joe Rogan's couch, you'd sell your soul to sit, but the purge is coming and you're caught in it. You get so upsetty when the chronos unwind. Looped in the matrix, leaving you behind. Call out the cowards from Carson to Greg. Archaix is rising, cracking your egg. Jimmy upsetting, oh, you're burning out. Grifter in the desert, full of doubt. Chill for the masses, pushing Nazi shit. But the truth from Archaix, it's a perfect hit. Run, Jimmy, run from the debate stage. Your theories crumble in the simulated cage. Upsetty spaghetti, tangled in your lies. The world's waking up, saying goodbye. Oh, Jimmy, why'd you have to go so low? Faking the facts, stealing the show. From the Sphinx's gaze to the Zodiac's lie, your empire's falling, no alibi. Archaix roars with the napalm truth, burning your bridges, exposing the proof. No more hiding in your bright insight bell. The simulation's glitching. Your story's
mainstream